Okay, so Loom, this platform on which I have been doing my online lectures, is acting a little persnickety. So let's see if it will play along. Okay, I'm recording still. Last time I tried to pull up the PowerPoint, it wouldn't stop recording. So let's see. Oh, is it still recording? Hello, this is online lecture 5. But we're going to talk about time travel today because I just wanted to. It doesn't really match what I said we were going to do on the syllabus now that I look on it, where it's talking about conflicts in the book. But, I finally started watching Endgame last night, Avengers Endgame. I know I'm about, 1 year too late. I do know the big spoiler about who dies. But I'm not going to tell you in case you haven't watched it yet. But last night, Avengers Endgame is about time travel. So it got me thinking about it with our book. And I decided to do some, kind of snooping around on the interwebs about it. And we're going to talk about that today. I have to do this lecture somewhat quickly because I have a meeting at 4 and it's 3:08. But it's kind of like a nebulous meeting. It's from 4 to 7. So I can check into it when I want to, but I certainly do not want to be in it at 7. No, thank you. Okay, so the fight in time travel. So you were supposed to read the chapter entitled The Fight. Is a long, meaty chapter. I kind of call it like the meat of Kindred because we get a lot of information in it, and there's just like a lot of stuff that happens to Dana. We learn a lot about her and Kevin. We learn about how Rufus and Alice end up together, and how horrible their story is. And, those are Dana's like great grandparents. And Dana, again, learns a great deal more about life on the plantation. So in the beginning of the fight, of course, this is what we're talking about. Dana goes back to the 1970s without Kevin. She received her first whipping by Tom Whalen, the Rufus's father, who is the owner of Whalen Plantation, because she was caught reading. Literacy is a powerful tool. I know that we take it for granted a lot in the 21st century because, we assume that knowing how to read is a given, but it's not. It's really not. It's a very powerful tool to have because it allows you to move forward in life and earn money. And back in this time period, if a slave knew how to read and write, they could forge their own papers. They could write passes for themselves. They could read street signs and directions to travel and escape. So she was caught reading. She was whipped. While she was being whipped, of course, it was extreme pain, and it propelled her back to the future. But Kevin was not with her, so she traveled back without him. So we learn in this that she goes home. She's home for approximately 8 days alone. She's tending to the wounds on her back, which I'm sure, actually I could have pulled up a picture of this. If you would like to see it, the wounds of whipping on one's back are pretty gnarly and raw. People think that Kevin's been beating her. Of course, I haven't seen her back, but she's pretty beat up. She gets a cousin to deliver her food. She kind of hides out in her house on, self-isolation by, mandated by herself. And during this time, she gives us this backstory about their family's racism and disapproval of their relationship and their marriage. Now, you remember from a previous chapter that Dana and Kevin are both orphans, and they are both raised by other individuals. But here we learn that when they both went to their families and proposed their marriage, both families were not happy. Dana's aunt and uncle, who were black, were not happy about her marrying a white man, and Kevin's, I believe it was his aunt, who was white, was not cool with her marrying, with him marrying a black woman. So I thought that it would be important if we were in class, I would have brought this up. about the Loving versus Virginia case, which some of you might know, but to remind ourselves that it was illegal. It was a criminal act to marry a person outside of your race until 1967. Now, I was born in 1974, which, of course, in my mind does not seem like that long ago because I like to think of myself as, still young. And that was, within my lifetime. So that I don't think of myself as extremely old at this point, just kind of like not old, not young. But 1967, that's only 7 years before I was born. So if you take someone my age and tack 8 years onto them, means they were born in a time period where Black people and white people could not get married, or else you would go to jail, which is insane. Like, it's insane to think that that was so little, like that time period was just, yesterday in some ways. So when you think about, if the book itself is starting in 1976, that's 9 years after the Supreme Court case ruled that constitutionally you could marry somebody of another race. So it's still a pretty new idea in the United States. Now, why does Octavia Butler bring this up, right? Like, why does she bring it up? Probably to show us that, compared to Rufus's time period to our present time period, we've both come a long way, but we haven't come far enough. So, in the 1970s, her and Kevin could legally get married, but it was still a new concept, and it was more than 150 years after the time period in which Dana is visiting Rufus. So you would think in 150 years, maybe, since Black people and white people had been in relationships in this country, usually through rape, but that something would have changed. And something did change, but it still wasn't necessarily sitting with people well. So we get the backstory on their family's racism. So you can realize that, Dana and Kevin are kind of all each other has. Like, they don't have any parents. Their families have disowned them because of their marriage. So it also makes their separation in this chapter even more painful. All right, so after she's home for 8 days, Dana gets pulled back to Rufus. And then she realizes that 5 years have passed. So Kevin has left the Wayland plantation and has moved away. They're not exactly sure where he went. It's not like they can call him on the cell phone or even send him an email. They have to send him a letter to the places where they thought he might be. So Rufus says he will send a letter to Kevin to try to find him for Dana, but we find out that he doesn't actually do this. Rufus has changed greatly as a character. He is becoming more like a grown white male plantation owner, meaning he is violent, he is mean, he is racist. And even though he's had this relationship with Dana since his childhood, and that Dana has saved his life multiple times, he's in a bit of a conflict, like an inner conflict with her, because he has this really intimate relationship with her, yet in the hierarchy of how he categorizes humans in his life, she should not be up here. She should be down here with the other slaves on the plantation. But he does have like a love for her, but then that love kind of conflicts with how society deems he should feel about her. Rufus and Alice are a main story within this chapter. Dana is pulled back into this time period because Rufus has raped Alice, and Alice's husband is beating Rufus to death. So Dana intervenes, kind of reminding Isaac, who was Rufus's husband, that if he kills Rufus, he's certainly going to be killed in a very brutal way. So she tends to Rufus while Alice and Isaac escape. However, they get caught. They're mercilessly beaten. They cut off Isaac's ears. They beat Alice, who was free, to a minute of death. And then Rufus actually buys her, which everybody thinks is hilarious because she's worth nothing because they've beaten her almost to death. He buys her, so now she is enslaved. She's gone from being freed to now she's enslaved. And because she broke the law, so she became I'm guessing she became the property of the state. Rufus buys her for hardly anything because she's so beaten, and he brings her back to the plantation and has Dana care for her. And Isaac, her husband, they cut off his ears and beat him to death, and they sell him down south. So she's lost her husband. For a while, Alice doesn't remember any of this because she probably has a traumatic brain injury, but slowly her memory comes back and she hates Rufus. However, Rufus loves her and he's going to have her. So he also employs Dana to try to get Dana to convince Alice that she can either choose to come to his bed or he will beat her into submission and then she will still have to come to his bed. So there's a lot of questions here about survival in this chapter as well. Dana says how Sarah, the cook, who is, kind of the large larger than life, woman figure in the text, how she's kind of just resigned to slavery. She's had all of her children sold away from her. Her husband died in an accident on the plantation. She's been allowed to keep carry her daughter because she's mute, but how Sarah has kind of accepted it in order to survive. Alice struggles more with this decision because she hates Rufus so much. He has sexually assaulted her. He has, in essence, gotten her husband taken away from her. He has now enslaved her, but yet she is still given a choice whether she can go to his bed and be his sexual partner by choice, or he will whip and beat her into submission and then she can go there anyway. These are both horrible choices, right? Which she's very embittered and angry about. She does not just resign to it like Sarah does for survival. She kind of, whoa, my cats just ran into the room. She kind of fights it more. Oops, sorry. All right, and then at the end of the chapter, Dana finds out that Rufus has not mailed Kevin the letters that he said he has. Alice finds them in his dresser because she's been going to his room at night now because she's his sexual partner. Dana is very angry, so she runs away. However, she gets caught and she's whipped again, but this time it does not transport her back to the future because she understands that she will not die from the whipping since she has endured it previously. So it just she kind of gets just beaten and stays. However, she kind of settles back into the routine of life on the plantation, wondering if she's ever going to leave. And then Kevin finally returns. So as Kevin and Dana are trying to exit the plantation on a horse, Rufus catches them and refuses to let them leave. They push back against him, saying, kind of like, you don't own us. And he tries to shoot them. And as he's shotgunning up, Dana starts to feel dizzy. Kevin jumps on her wounded, slashed up back, and they both go back to the 1970s. End of long chapter. All right, that's the summary for you, which we would have done in class. I miss you guys. Okay. All right, so let's talk about time travel. I started researching time travel for this class, and it's like I went into my own wormhole, and I was like, oh my God, there's so much information. I can't keep up. There is so much fascinating information. I know that I have a friend right now who's teaching a time travel class, like a philosophy and literature class on time travel at NYU. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to have to teach a time travel class. Cause it's just super interesting. So there's kind of three ways that time travel tends to work in narratives. So one is the consequences of traveling to the past or the future to change, alter, or ensure history. Is that the right ensure? I'm not sure. Either intentionally or by accident, and the ways in which altering the past changes the future. So this is the idea of like going to the past to try to change the future. So this is totally against copyright, and I'm probably going to go to jail for this, but I recorded this part of Avengers Endgame. Let me see if I can play it for you. So there's all these complications about going back to the past. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Let's see if we can watch it.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can.
Oh, that's like double Lori there.
But okay, so still recording.
I'm
not showing you my face right now because it's 11:10 and I didn't shower today. I want to show you this clip on time travel, which I finally watched Endgame. Well,
all right, where am I? Oh, there I am. Okay. So I was watching that last night with my kids, and I hope I don't get arrested for copyright infringement for stealing that little piece off of my rental from Amazon. Sorry, Avengers Endgame. I'm not done with you yet. But so this whole concept of time travel and going back into the past to alter the future is problematic because if we as humans live life in a forward strip, like we were talking about in the last lecture, like in a linear A, B, C, D, E, F, G fashion, if you go backwards in time, you're still living in a forward motion. So even if you're in the past, it's still your future. So you can't, see, I already lost track. That's so confusing. I should stop this lecture, but I don't have time to restart it. Anyways, you can't change the past, totally change the past. Dana can't go back to the past and just like free all of her relatives from Rufus, kill his dad, like set my people free and let them all go off into the future, like as, free, African slaves they wouldn't be slaves, obviously freed African individuals, African Americans in the United States, because then she would never be born, right? She needs Rufus and Alice to have this totally effed up situation, which is pretty much like raping her with a small element of consent, but not really, so that Dana's ancestor can be born, so that Dana can be born. So there's consequences of traveling to the past or future. So another storyline here is the past cannot be changed and the future is already predetermined. This is kind of what Kindred is working on. Like Dana's not going back to change the past. She's not going back to save Alice from this like predatory relationship with her master, or to free her relatives, or to make any massive shifts in the horrible history of America that involves slavery. She's pretty much going to ensure Rufus's survival until the point in which Hagar is born, right? So her actions are intrinsic to events as they originally unfolded, in that she's not changing anything. She's just keeping Rufus alive, which, we could debate if we were in class whether that is or is not changing anything. Obviously, Rufus had survived long enough to give birth so that Alice could give birth to Hagar, so that Dana could come into being. So what she's really doing is just kind of like holding time in the past up, like almost like as a buttress or a support, but she's not shifting it around at all. Another way that time travel works in narratives is this kind of idea of a multiverse. I love this idea. I think there's this really great show on Netflix called The OA, and I know Lyric, you've watched this because we talked about it this summer when we were in Ecuador. And the multiverse theory is that there's like multiple realities that exist, that coexist, and that we are present perhaps in one of them, but there is a totally different reality that's just traveling alongside us. So I was reading something, it was explaining it as like a pair of pants. So you know how your pants, okay, your pants like kind of start here, and it's like one universe. So this is like you. But then your legs, your pant legs, are each like a different options, different life options. So like perhaps you are traveling. Let's see if I can stand on the chair. Can you see this? These are the things we have to do. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is like the beginning of you, and then you make some sort of decision, or your life goes a certain way, and you travel down this. It's not a universe because it's not one. This life path, but there's an alternate reality than the one you're traveling on right now that exists over here. You're not here because you're actually here, but this still exists. And had you made a different choice, you would have traveled down this way instead, and you would not know this one at all. So, if you think about your life like as a series of like forks in the road, it doesn't mean that other fork doesn't exist because you didn't choose it. It's kind of that whole idea of like, if the tree falls in the woods and nobody's there, does it still make noise? Well, yeah, of course, it still makes noise. It doesn't matter if anyone hears it or not, it's still there. So, say there was a reality in my life in which I moved to New York City when I'm 25 and I choose this path. Well, what if I stayed in North Carolina? Or what if I'd moved to California? Or what if I'd done the Peace Corps? Like, there's still all these options that those worlds don't exist because I didn't go into them. There's just like a different reality. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but I really find that one like I can just like sit and lay around contemplating that like all day, especially, with your own personal life choices. Now this one, the consequences of traveling to the past or future, in some way to make a change, that's what they're trying to do in ENGL, and they're trying to do in a lot of things. Sometimes the past can't be changed and it's already determined. So, the characters in a story or a movie are going back to just kind of bear witness or kind of allow the story to unfold. And then in this type of time travel, perhaps they can like leap from one multiverse to another one, which that's what happens in that television show called The OA on Netflix, which I think is just like one of the best shows ever if you have time on your hands, which isn't a weird time. I don't know if you guys feel this, like how little time we seem to have. Like I'm locked in my apartment all day. I can't go anywhere. And I run out of time every day. I look at the clock and I'm like, how the hell is it like 6 o'clock already? Like I still want to exercise. Like I forgot to, eat a snack. Like, where did time go? I don't know. Like time is very strange right now. I do feel like we're living in some weird alternate reality. And I do keep thinking like, oh, if only we'd known, like, if I'd known the coronavirus was coming, then I'd go back in time and I would have made this choice or that choice or this choice or that choice. Like, but of course we didn't know any of this. Okay, so let's go on. All right. So time travel often allows the writer of whatever story it is you're reading to provide some sort of social commentary. So just like in last semester in our horror movie class, we were saying like horror movies being this like outlier in the genre allows them to make like a social commentary on like the state of our society at the time. And time travel does that too, because once the individual who's time traveling can kind of get some distance from the present, they can it has that like third person omniscient view where they can kind of hover above it and like look at the effed up society or world or family dynamic or relationship, and they can see it differently. Kind of like that makes me think of that pale blue dot photograph of the earth. Oh, I have to find it for you. See, if we were in class, I would just be like VJing this whole class, as in video jockeying, not whatever that sounded like. Pale blue dot photo. Here we are. So this is my favorite one. Oh, dude, I just want the image. Come on, man. Okay, so This is Earth. And that's it. That's all we are. Like, this is taken from under Saturn. So this is Saturn, and this is Saturn's rings. And this is some sort of like camera that was out in space shooting our, universe. And this is our planet. It is a tiny, teeny, tiny baby pale blue dot. So as time travel allows that distance for to see, like, if you look at this, like, you can conclude just like how tiny and insignificant we all really are. Like, forget about, like, as individuals, look how small our planet is. It's like a speck of dust, and that means that, like, we're all like a speck of dust on a speck of dust. Like, of course, we all think our lives are so monumentally important because they're our lives and that's all we get. But, like, it's like one of these perspective shifting concepts that, like, when you step back and step back and step back and step back and step back, you can see things differently. So that's, another element of time travel as as a narrative strategy, right? All right, so how do you time travel? In a lot of different ways. One is like a time machine. So you think about Bill and Ted and their, like, phone booth that they get into, or hot tub time machine, or some, like, crazy thing that was just like at the beginning of, did I already close it? Yeah, the ENGL machine where they build this giant, like, crazy contraption. So a machine has always been like a vessel that you can, like, get into, and then this is like, and it transports you somewhere. That's kind of, one very obvious option. Another option that has been around just since time immemorial, from ancient mythology up until stories in the, 19th century, which is where Dana's visiting, is the idea of time traveling through sleep. So sleep, my son just snuck out of here. Sleep is like provides a portal because, sleep is always kind of like an interesting, crazy space where you go into your subconscious mind. But you could kind of fall asleep and then slip through, like, some sort of time space portal and end up in another place and time. Then, of course, you wake up and you're like, oh, what a crazy dream that was. Wow. But that gives you access to other time zones. And then it gives you that great explanation, too, of, oh, I didn't really time travel. I was just dreaming. But some great examples, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with from, high school English, is, of course, A Christmas Carol, where, Ebenezer Scrooge, or if you've watched the Disney version, Scrooge McDuck, he's this nasty, nasty, greedy old man, and he falls asleep and he visits, like, Christmas past and Christmas future, and is supposed to teach him this lesson about being like a, nasty, miserly human being, and that there's, more to life than money, blah, blah, blah. And then Washington Irving's Rip Van Winkle, where the guy falls asleep and wakes up and he has the beard that, like, goes down the hall, and, he's, all this time has passed. And I can't remember that one. I remember I did read it in high school, or probably in some American lit class, like in college, and it has escaped me. But those are a few examples of, like, sleep being a portal. Now, the last one is, like, where you're like, and I wish, I had a physicist friend, which I have one. And I guess if we actually had a class, maybe I would see if he would actually have joined us for class and explained some of this stuff for us. But last method is all these, like, physics. It's all related to physics of space and time. And a lot of this stuff goes way over my head, and I can't even begin to explain it to you. But, the theory of general relativity, the idea of a wormhole, this idea of the multiverse, which I tried to explain, or the many worlds interpretation. This is a really great, like, website with, like, infographics on it about different types of time travel and the science behind it. And, I think this stuff, like, I read it and then I'm like, yeah, I think I'm getting it. No, I'm not getting it. But I still am always trying to get it. It's like my brain just, like, I get to a certain point of digesting it and it's like, and it hits, like, a roadblock. But fascinating stuff. And, as you can see, humans just love to think about time travel. Like I was looking up, is this time travel books? H.G. Wells, The Time Machine, Stephen King, Time Traveler's Wife. This is a very tender, sweet, like kind of pulp fiction-y book, love story. Kindred, Isaac Asimov, huge one. Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, Wrinkle in Time. I don't know if any of you saw this when it came out recently, but people love the concept of time travel, but they really love the movies. They can be like really serious movies, they can be kind of funny movies, like, oh, look, it's a rom-com and time travel, or it can be, more serious, of course, Oh, they did remake The Time Traveler's Wife into a movie, but I never watched it. I heard it was pretty bad. Oh, that looks cool. Anyone see that one? I love me some anime. Anyways, what's that? Frequently asked questions about time travel. Maybe I'll watch it. So there's tons of movies and tons of books that employ time travel as a narrative device in order to push the plot forward, make some sort of social commentary, have some sort of character development, all of the above. All right, where am I here? Can you read a pale blue dot? I don't know what that is. I shouldn't close in case that's our movie. Okay, let's see. Back to my lecture. Okay, I think I'm on the last slide here. All right, so we do know about time travel and kindred. Why time travel? Diana has to protect Rufus until her ancestor Hagar is born. She keeps getting pulled back when he's on the brink of death. He is obviously not a very risk-adverse man-child, pretty much. She's not changing history. She's just like ensuring that it's going to happen. And again, I think that's the wrong ensure. What's wrong with me today? Quarantine brain. And it also provides us with a bit of social commentary. Like Dana is really learning about what slavery was like for her ancestors and all they had to do to survive so that she, in turn, could exist one day in the far future. So like I said, previously, this whole concept of like you being your ancestors' like greatest dreams, like, I'm sure that her ancestors in 1815, like 1825, were not even contemplating a free Black woman who was employed as a writer, a published writer, married to a white man, living in a house in California in a state that didn't even exist. Like, it's almost, they couldn't even probably think beyond that. Like, their imaginations probably couldn't even go beyond, what they knew. Like we were talking about, like your imagination is very limited by your life. But she is able to expand her imagination and knowledge through this lived experience of going back in time and living as a slave. And that's it for my lecture today. Oops, let me just close that out. So, question. This is the really cool page I'm showing you with all these infographics on how time travel works in science fiction. And y'all are smarter than me, so take a gander at this. About all these ways that time travel works. I will send you this website. And then there's also like different, and I know it's Wikipedia, don't judge me. But some really interesting things about like how time travel themes in literature, which you could really dig into a little bit if you're curious about this. I'll give you this website too. And then also, this is kind of like, whatchamacallit, time machines, time travel and physics, general relativity, different space-time geometries, wormholes, other approaches based on general relativity, many worlds interpretation. And again, it is Wikipedia, so it's not exactly a hard academic source, but it's a great place to just get some like general info. if you're just curious. So I will send you all of these links. But one thing I wanted to ask you, which is another extra credit option, but I guess you could actually watch any time travel movie, is if you had Netflix. Oh, I guess it logged me out. This is our family. My kids love Stranger Things. I love her because I used to love Uma Thurman in Kill Bill as a young lass. This was a recent time travel movie that came out a year ago. And it kind of really complicates this idea of trying to go back and change something, and how you can't really do that. Like, you can't change something big. So, because it'll affect the future in a different way, and the future is different. So here, let's watch the trailer. Let's see. Here we go.
When we get this up and running, we gonna be out of here. Stanford, Morehouse, Spelman.
Hey, bring me along. Hey, whoa. This is something Einstein spent his entire life trying to do.
We proved that time travel to the past is possible if we just give it some time.
It's scary, but you inspire me. You going places, CJ, and since Pops is gone, I gotta make sure that you get there.
I don't need you always playing Big Brother.
I'm the only big brother you've got. NYPD don't move!
Calvin Walker, a 19-year-old black teen, was allegedly shot and killed by an NYPD officer. Walker was armed with nothing but a cell phone.
I'm so sorry about all of this. If I could go back and fix it, I would.
If we just go back, get them out of there, then he's saved.
We only have so many times to get this right. Everything's gonna need to be perfect.
What's today's date?
June 28th. Sebastian, this has to work.
But too late. It's about controlling something we obviously have no control over.
My brother didn't deserve this. Just miss him, y'all.
How many times have you jumped back, CJ? We're not superheroes.
Where is the justice?
We can't do this anymore.
We only have 2 jumps left.
Where is the justice for our sons and our daughters? When will it end for the whole nation?
You gotta listen to us. You're going to get killed.
All right. So I feel like if we were in class, we would watch this because I think it's a great pairing to Kindred, because in Kindred, Octavia Butler was trying to give us some social commentary on slavery. What this film is doing is trying to give us some social commentary on police violence against Black young men's bodies. And although the protagonists are these, young Black brainiacs who created an ability to travel in time, like can you change this? How can you change this? Like, how can we change this social problem? It's so strange to watch that trailer now because the whole idea of being outside and all of that just seems so totally bizarre. However, if you don't have Netflix, let me know because we can potentially set up some way for you to watch this if you really want to watch this. So you know how to contact me. You have my number. A lot of you have my real cell phone number because I love you. You have my Google Voice number and you have my email. So if you don't have a Netflix account and you really want to watch this film, like, hit me up and I will try to figure out some sort of like workaround for you in that way. Okay. Your homework is to read the next large chapter. So we just read the fight. So now you're going to read the storm. And we're pretty much done with this book because the last 2 chapters are itty bitty by comparison. And that's it, my friends. I miss you. I think of you all the time, and I hope you are doing okay. Let me know if you need anything, okay? And I'll talk to you soon, or see you soon on the information superhighway. All right.